everyone, and welcome to the Innovation Tech Community. And today, the first episode with our expert speaker, the Bhargav Reddy, the solution architect from the TCS. So I'm very excited about the today's session. About the navigating the cloud flow integration with the Power Pages. Hi Bhargav, and welcome to Innovation Tech Community.
So, hi guys, and very good morning, and thanks Pratap and Azar for the wonderful opportunity and a great initiative that you guys have started.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about your session. My viewers also very excited. So approximately 500 plus registrations have come across the within 2 weeks. So that is the huge response within the two weeks for your particular session as well. So we are very excited about your session. Please go ahead. So the stage is yours right now. So please feel free to share your screen and explain about yourself and yeah, let's get started.
Thank you.
I'm at the
Thanks.
back end. If you have it, yeah, I'm at the back end. If you have any, issues, then I can feel free to reach out to you. Okay,
Perfect.
and if guys feel free to drop your queries and questions. Then I can display your questions related to the power pages. So the Bhargav will help you on that. Okay, I just share your screen as well. Yeah. Okay, Bhargav.
Yeah, so good morning everybody, and today we will be looking at navigating Cloudflow integrations using Power Pages. That's the topic there. But having said that, if you have any queries through the session, I would encourage you to probably keep your queries to the end because sometimes some of your queries will be overtaken by events. I will not go time bound. I will ensure that I cover the topic as early as possible and try to give back a few minutes to ensure that we have a good round of discussion as well. So I'm Bhargav Reddy. I'm a solution architect at TCS. I'm part of a niche team called TCS Rapid Apps Automation Team, which specializes in delivering digital workplace solutions for various customers across the globe. We work day in day out on very critical aspects of our Power Platform. I have overall about 15 plus years of experience and multiple certifications. Not only Power Platform, started with .NET to SharePoint and Java and other platforms as well, including Azure and a bit on the Microsoft 365 apps and services as well. So this is my LinkedIn profile. So if probably I'll just keep that alive for another 20, 30 seconds if you would like to quickly scan that. Yeah. So coming to the most important aspect is to understand the overall Power Platform ecosystem. Yet again, I'm not going to deep dive into it. We'll come to the flavor of the session today. It is going to be a combination of two of the verticals that we see here. But in reality, you can pretty much use any of these verticals that you're seeing on the screen in a standalone manner. These are all standalone apps and services which are part of, or rather, I would like to usually use the terminology called verticals within Power Platform, right? So recently, there has been a bit of a rechristening going on from Microsoft's end. So what is happening is Copilot was a capability that they added within the Power Platform world, and a certain renaming has happened. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is actually this particular part which says the Power Virtual Agents. This can be now called as Copilot Studio. That's the only change that you see here, right? But apart from that, overall Power Platform is a pretty good low-code, no-code platform which can be utilized for rapid acceleration development. And it's just not for low-code developers. It's just not for those business professionals or IT professionals or site administrators who use a particular tool to perform their configurations. It is also for pro code developers, right? So whenever you're planning projects around Power Platform, you need to ensure that you need to have a fusion. You need to have fusion teams where you have your roles distributed across various peers. I would probably encourage you to have a site administrator, have a space for IT professionals or citizen developers as well, and then you also give space for pro code developers. And depending on the needs and customizations that the customer is expecting, you develop solutions accordingly. So that's a quick round of introduction about Power Platform. Deep diving into one of the verticals, what we will be heavily looking at is how to use Power Automate. use workflow automations in order to achieve certain results within the portal development vertical called Power Pages. So overall, if you look at it, Power Pages, it's pretty well molded. So what you see to the left, marked in orange, is basically the no-code, low-code capabilities which come out of the box. So it kind of has configuration features which kind of allow you to create web pages and page content. You can enable some of your core styling themes. You can apply your authentication authorization. There are about 5 to 6 easily out of the box available options. What I can remember from the top of my head are Azure AD, which is out of the box. Local sign in is also enabled out of the box. Pretty much you can use Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, and Gmail as one of your authentication layers. Pertaining to authorization, then authorization comes one step after authentication. So you can use something called the concept of web roles within Power Pages in order to kind of go ahead and plan your authorization and who sees what on after logging into the particular site, right? So there might be a particular web link set on your Power Pages site that you don't want to display to everybody in your organization. Let's say, for example, only when HRs log into a particular site, they should be in a position to see those particular links, but not all other people should be able to see that, right? Next is content snippets and site settings. These are a bit of for another day, another rainy day. You can personally reach out to me if you have any issues pertaining to any of the standard features, and we can discuss. But what's important is the right part of it, that the pro code, which is marked in blue, right? Not everything is achievable through out of the box standard features. Sometimes you need to be in a position to extend it. In order to extend it, what are some of the things that you might require? You require in the world of Power Pages or in the world generally in portals development. I would say in the last I would say 7 to 8 years, the world has moved more towards a scripting based world, which is more client side favorable rather than server side. So that's why you see some of the client side tools marked there, which is JavaScript, HTML, CSS. And then you kind of also have the capabilities of developing your own custom page layouts or style sheets. Also integrate some of your PCF or code components that you can develop. You can have your own custom grids and pretty much use liquid code or Power Pages web API, which are out of the box available options. Very good structure. When to use what is debatable, but I would say liquid code if you're working with a system where uh, you know um, pretty much you're used to a particular language. Like for example, if you're used to JSON or XML kind of language, probably it's easier to adapt to liquid code. It is a bit of a server-side logic pre-render, so which means that it also executes much before the DOM exists, and then you apply those particular changes on the DOM. But Power Pages Web API is generally more like API call based, where you can use it to perform all your CRUD operations, and it can also be plugged in as a Power Automate trigger. So one of the default capabilities and why Microsoft also recommends Power Pages Web API is something that you would want to definitely make a note is that the security tokens are applied by default whenever the Power Pages API is called, which means that uh, whenever you're making a particular call to a, let's say to a data or table, it has the ability to fetch results only that you should be able to see based on the authorization that we spoke about earlier, right? So for example, if HR is querying a particular table and there are only certain records which are confidential that the HR must see and they have the required authorization, the portals pages web API call will automatically keep it audience the audience streaming is automatically applied onto those particular records. Whereas when it comes to liquid code, it is something that you might have to extend your code from the authorization perspective and write all that particular conditional logic in order to display your results. So that's one key point that I would want to mention. And most important, the core concept that I want to talk about is to have cloud flow integrations, right? That opens up a plethora of opportunities for pro-code developers, especially to bring, to kind of merge the best of both worlds, right? For example, Power Pages from the business scenario is to be supposed to be used for enterprise, business centric, cloud centric, and data centric websites. That's where you kind of have Power Pages as a platform to be utilized, right? And especially when you have enterprise data that needs to be exposed to the external users, That's when you would probably go ahead with looking at Power Pages as an option. Licensing, all of those particular, another rainy day we can have a discussion. But then when it comes to integrations, true capabilities exist through Power Automate. Quickly touch base upon for chatbots or kind of having that omni-channel experience. You can use Power Virtual Agents yet again, which has been renamed as Copilot Studio to remind you. And then Power BI is available by two particular integration methodologies within Power Pages out of the box, which is the embedded service and the normal Power BI service to be enabled, right? So that's also something that you can go ahead and enable and work in the background to kind of enhance your knowledge. And Dataverse, definitely, it's always reliable, and it's definitely the backbone of any Power Pages portal. So if you are building a portal in which you are not going to utilize the true potential of Dataverse, I would encourage not to go ahead and kind of work around your projects with Power Pages, because you're really missing the point. But yeah, having said that, if you go to have you have a strong need to utilize Dataverse as the backbone first, then you can probably think of developing a Power Pages. Let's come to the next part, which is basically some of the tools that you might require. An E3 or an E5 trial account, definitely you can plug in your Power Platform community developer plan. Having a database environment to work around all of yours, like a container, is definitely required, and a sub container called more like a best practice that you kind of utilize even from the Power Apps world, which is to create a solution for all your components, right? And in terms of extensibility, there are quite a lot of intelligent tools which are available in the market for you to extend, and for all pro code dev tooling, you do Visual Studio Code, ability to have Windows Power to utilize Windows PowerShell, and there's something called a Power Platform Tools extension, which is basically to apply these particular settings on your Visual Studio Code that gives you the capability to work with Power Platform CLI, which is basic command line interface. It's called the PAC CLI, right? And also the XRM toolbox, great set of tools developed by some of the leading experts in the industry who kind of looked at different use cases. Whenever they hit a particular constraint or a roadblock, they've seen certain automation capabilities and generated tools around it. And the overall tool, which kind of contains quite a lot of internal tools that can be utilized readily, and it is free because it's community based, is XRM Toolbox. Two of the particular tools that I specifically utilize is the Dataverse Query Builder, which kind of helps me generate all my queries, and also the Fetch XML Builder, right? So that's two particular tools that I generally utilize whenever I kind of looking at development mode within Power Pages. Yeah, so nobody likes slides, even I don't like, so I'm almost done with my slides. So let's move on to the actual part of the demo. Mhm. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen just a second, just to bring in the particular, yeah, yeah. Pratap, I hope you can plug the screen back in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I just shared.
Yeah, thank you. So to start with Power Pages, you probably have to utilize the URL. It's quite standard. It says make.powerpages.microsoft.com. Go in there. You have some great set of capabilities to Copilot that you can explore. Provide a prompt, and it can actually generate your website with a basic set of skeletons, like your mission page, your vision page, which you can later tailor, of course. I mean, it kind of provides you the content. Great ability to start with creating by utilizing a particular template, or you can also start from blank. Be careful that when you start from blank, there is nothing much, not even your login module. So you might want to look at utilizing a particular template and then tailoring that for your needs. So what you see here is, before we move into the site that we have here, which is my site here called Primus Praxis, the standard solution practices are actually outside the particular container, which is on the root of the particular page. So I have a solution, and for all my custom components, which I kind of mentioned in one of the slides, I utilize the solution strategy, which is basically to include all my tables, all my custom tables here, along with any solutions that are required. I kind of plug in them here in this particular solution, right? So I think I got the wrong solution. Let me just put in the right one. So all you see is two of the ones that we are going to look is basically the flow image generator and the current weather here today, right, in the demo. So I also have a custom table which kind of has some data, kind of plugging it into the site overall, right? So let me go to the home page back, and then you navigate to your particular site. Just bear with me; it's a bit slow, especially on weekends because I personally feel that Microsoft is deploying something or working around the larger system, so kind of takes a bit. Yeah. So this button is basically, I mean, for all people who are very new to Power Pages, just a quick, check for you. If you're starting new and if you have certain prompts to put in, you can put in those particular prompts, and Copilot can actually generate certain forms, or it can help you generate certain tables, and those capabilities are available there. That's for another topic. But then, if you have some comments to leave whenever you're collaborating with somebody, creating a page you want to expect somebody else, you can add in the comment here and tag them. So that capability is there. Learn will directly take you to the learning modules. And then two of the important factors are whenever you make changes, be it the configuration aspect, be it to the tables aspect, or be it to the pages or one of your particular workspaces that you see to the left in the Power Pages Design Studio. And what you see here is generally referred to as Power Pages Design Studio, right? So you need to synchronize your changes, and then once the changes are synchronized, you have the ability to preview, right? So that's one thing that you definitely want to remember. I'm just going to remove these particular windows because I don't need them, and we have enough canvas there. So some of the other workspaces that you can explore is basically if you want to apply a particular theme, change your color combinations, what comes where, what kind of color, you can use the styling. The next is the data explorer, which is basically where you can work with your tables, create your tables. If you have any views to generate, you can generate your views from here. All these are some of my custom views which I've generated. And if you have some forms to create, you can go ahead and create those forms. As you see, all these are my forms which I've created, custom forms. And this is one of the tables that I have. The one thing that I would say, it's a tip, that whenever you're working, if you don't see, you already created a solution, but you don't see that particular solution in your particular site, the best thing you can do is click on this wheel icon, and then you can set the solution called whichever you use your current. So in my case, it's Praxis Primus. So I go ahead, I've already set that particular value there. And the most important aspect, which is basically we'll spend most of our time here today, right? Because this is where the integration capabilities are added by Microsoft into the setup tab, right? So from the setup tab, pretty much the first page kind of takes you to the run site checker. If you run this, it will kind of give you what are some of the things. It has a particular predetermined checklist which says if there are any security related tests that you're failing, and it kind of tests the strength of your site before you go public. So if there are any gaps to fill, it gives you a great opportunity to go ahead and fix them, and then some basic details. And then it also gives you the ability to access the Power Platform Admin Center. Click on this, you go into the deeper Power Pages Configuration Studio or Admin Studio. Thereby, you can work on, like say for example, look at this. So the moment you look at this, it's more like, oh, this is the job of a site administration, right? So if a site administrator is accessing a particular site, he wants to work with domains. Let's say the basic domain for this particular site is praxisprimus.powerappsportal.com, but then they want to change it as like praxis.com/en/us. That's the particular domain and subdomain that they want to give. It's definitely possible. Site administrator can use the admin center and go ahead and make those particular changes. Power Pages provides a go live checklist. Pretty great there as well. Well covered. Identity providers, like I mentioned, already basic set of providers are already there, and you can also add your own custom providers. Table permissions, which is very important because propagation of changes also in Power Pages is an important aspect. So whenever you create some table components and you are actually adding, say suppose a a view onto a page through the form of a list component, you need to ensure that the permissions are set. So how you set the permissions is basically use the table permissions and apply those particular table permissions effectively, thereby giving people access onto your data, right? And then the site visibility. The site visibility is basically public and private. So by default, whenever you're working with uh, basically when you're working with Power Pages sites, by default the site is in private mode, and whenever you feel that it is ready to be moved into a public state, you can go ahead and you can utilize this particular functionality. Most important when it comes to kind of promoting this as an app based idea, you can also do that. You can convert your particular Power Pages site into a progressive web application, also something that you would want to probably explain offline, right? And chatbot and external apps, I will quickly touch base. Chatbot is basically for the Copilot Studio, which I mentioned. Pretty much you can create a chatbot, directly integrate it, choose your data source, and it will create, and you can test the chatbot directly from this particular setup page. External apps, by default, Microsoft has deployed these two capabilities. In the days to come, I see that Microsoft is going to definitely add more capabilities here. Some of the core capabilities is DocuSign and Stripe. Personally speaking, I have explored DocuSign, and the integration is through the form of a multi-step form. Still, I would say it can be better, I would say, and the ability to add DocuSign in a more custom fashion in the form that you would want to desire, probably let's say on just a basic form where you want to capture signatures or e-signatures from customers uh, whenever they review a particular document or a contract or a trade agreement, and you want to capture the signature, digital signature, you can utilize DocuSign. And if there are any payments that you will want to accept, then definitely Stripe is there. One part I'm not really sure why Microsoft is kind of pushing people to utilize multi-step forms is definitely a big question mark that I have. So, quick time check. I think pretty much we are on track. Cloud flows, the true topic of today, right? So, what Power Pages they've done is they've just given one particular window here which says Cloud Flows. It has some key capabilities. I will come to those particular key capabilities, but generally, I'm comfortable, kind of working with Power Pages, sorry, Power Automate from make.powerautomate.com, right? So if somebody is having any question that, hey, Bhargav, is it possible that I've already created my cloud flows? Can I, in some form or fashion, utilize these cloud flows into my Power Pages site? Yes, definitely that can be done. So as you see, there is a button called here, and that's what I generally use. So I create all my flows here, all my custom connectors, all my connections, everything is established in make.powerautomate.com. And then once everything is set up here, I kind of come here and add something called add existing flow, right? So if it is something that is already added to the current site, it will display it under this particular section called cloud flows in this particular site. Two particular flows which I've already added onto the site, right? So let's click one of them and see what happens, right? So pretty much whenever you add an existing flow, it allows you to first select the name of that particular flow, right? Let's say you went to make.powerautomate.com and you created a particular cloud flow. All those particular cloud flows which you have created will list here, right? So you can pretty much search for your cloud flow. So once I have searched for it, it has automatically, it is basically a disabled field here. The flow that you select, the URL of the particular flow is displayed here. So this is a very crucial piece of information that you would want to copy. Don't worry. Most of the times in the concept of client secrets or client API keys, we have generally observed that once you copy a particular key and that window is lost, there's a very good chance that you will not be able to go back and look at that particular key, right? It's important that you take the key and note it down, right? But in this particular implementation, there is no such need. You can come back, utilize the same fashion that I opened a particular entry here, and you can use this copy icon and Also set who will be some of the roles that will have access onto the particular flow, because in the world of Power Pages, everything is about integration. After integration, everything is about authorization, who needs to see what, right? So here by default I have some set of roles. I've added all my roles and have clicked on save. Similarly, for my get current weather app also, I have selected the particular name of the flow, the URL is there, quite out there, and then the roles are added, right? So uh, these are some of the basic things. So let's go into the actual part of the implementation. So one of the points is that I wanted to come here is, before the coming to the demo, I wanted to see if I can do two things. One is basically use any of the out of the box services or connectors within particular within Power Automate, and see if I can utilize the information and kind of create a dynamic component on the page whereby the users have the ability to input something, and based on a particular button submission, I should be able to dynamically go fetch the results and be able to dynamically present it to my audience as well. That's the thought process. So the first demo that you're going to see is basically it's going to be uh, uh, it's so everything is browser based. So we will preview this particular site and we will take a look at each of the samples. So you'll see two pages. One is basically to showcase the basic integration capabilities of the cloud flows, and then you'll also see the second demo, which is basically I've gone one step ahead. And what I've thought is, last night I was just in the back of my mind thinking, just showing a weather app to my audience, is there something more I can think of? So I was thinking, is there a possibility to integrate some kind of an open AI service, which, like for example, would it? I just put a question to myself: would it be possible if I put in a text box, allowed my user to provide a prompt, and then click on submit? Would it be possible for me, in some form or fashion, through Cloudflows, be able to pass this information to an OpenAI service, fetch the information, which is basically, in this case, I'm generating a DAL-E image, right? I'm using DAL-E 3 services. I am going to, at runtime, take the user input and pass it to the service. Whatever is going to be the URL of the image that is going to be generated, I will be binding it back onto the particular page onto an image tag. So that's basically what's happening in terms of business logic. We'll take a quick look into the code as well, but let's quickly finish the demos of both the pages and then fall back into the code samples, right? So I have two pages here, like I mentioned. First one is Power Automate integration. Like I said, sync changes and then preview. I don't have not made any changes since last night, so I'm pretty much confident that I don't have anything to push back into my configuration or to my database. So I'm going to quickly preview it. So let's say a city. I'm going to say Bangalore, and there you go. So what this is actually doing is, it is using the current get current weather MSN service. Dynamically, it takes the input value that the user has provided, goes in. There are some set of basic, parameters that are sent out as an output from by the Cloudflow. We're fetching that, and we are going to apply that. So what is interesting here is, when you look at the particular flow, right? So the name of the flow is get current weather. I'm just going to quickly execute this. Sorry, not execute, probably, yeah, just enhance this. I'm going to open a succeeded flow so that we can take a quick look as to what will be some of the inputs and outputs. So the trigger here, which is very important, is that we have a trigger which says that whenever a Power Pages is called, whenever a flow is called from Power Pages. So that is the trigger you need to use, right? So here as well, I have used the trigger, and I have created a text input for that particular trigger, right? So the trigger will accept a text input. In this case, whatever is the input that we are providing in this particular text box is being accepted as an input, right? The next step is, I take that particular input, which is basically my city name, and I pass it to my get current weather action, right? So if you look at it, the location is getting passed as Bangalore. The units have kept it as Imperial, and as soon as you see that, the outputs are generated in this fashion. But the last part is there is also another intelligent action which is available for Power Pages, which is the real essence of this particular, you know, entire demo, right? We are we need a trigger whenever something is called from Power Pages. We take some input, pass it on to that particular flow. The flow will transform, use that information, process, access some services in the background, fetch information. And at some point, you need to return this information back to Power Pages as well in a very acceptable manner. And for that, Microsoft has already provided a particular action called return values to Power Pages, right? So, key things to note, the actions are, I'm going to click on edit so that you can make a note. Also, this is going to be there on YouTube. So definitely if you want to refer back, you can refer back to the video. And if you're working around something and you don't know if it is going to help you out to refer back, you can always, subscribe to Innovation Tech Community YouTube channel, be in a position to look at all those playlists and access them as well, right? um, this is the action, right? So the first thing that it expresses is location, and then get current weather is a plain vanilla action. And in return, these are the most important aspects that you should remember. So get current weather kind of provides an output, but the output is basically it's more like a past form of JSON, right? And how do you get that particular information? You can pretty much click on here and you can list the dynamic outputs content. But if it is not available, you can also use expressions, right? So you can use your own custom expressions to get from a particular action and then apply those particular expressions onto these each of these particular criterias. All of this return values to Power Pages are something that you need to construct. So for example, the and outputs are not defined. It is something that you need to define. So for example, if you know that the output is going to be, say, let's say some created date, some URL, and some kind of a variable information, you just kind of define all those outputs and you say where to get that output from, based on your processing or business logic. And then that's it. You test your workflow here once, and then if you're getting the output, pretty much you are sorted, right? So that's how quickly it enables users to access external integrations. Like for example, these are, let's say that you have a web page where you want to display weather, and then you also want to display stock information, like in a web part or a small like a widget. Definitely you can develop these intelligent components, probably look at options like creating a web template component, and introduce those business logics in the background, call the cloud flows in the background, and then showcase the output to your users as well, right? So this pretty much kind of explains the get current weather method. I'm just going to take a quick pause. Any questions till now, Pratap? Anybody has any raise their hands or anything?
Yeah, we have one question from YouTube, that is Monica.
Okay.
So I just displayed here. So could you share insights on effective navigating Cloudflow integration with Power Apps?
Absolutely. See, fundamentally, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's a Power Platform is a very powerful ecosystem, right? It has an umbrella of apps and services which are all standalone in nature. So whatever you're developing in Power Automate, whatever I kind of explained now, this flow can be utilized even from Power Apps. So only thing that you need to ensure is the fundamental logic when you develop the flow. Here it is returning back to Power Pages. So if you want to develop it for Power Apps, you pretty much have to utilize the same strategy, right? So I'm sure Microsoft will have. I have not explored this. I'm just saying this from the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that if they have actions which have created for Power Pages and exposed this in this form and fashion, definitely will be something that will be allowed even for Power Apps, which means that you will see an action called, uh, you know, whenever a particular flow is called from Power Apps, right? And return values to Power Apps instead of Power Pages. So that's how I would probably plan my integrations, and pretty much use the fundamentals of Power Apps So I can actually quickly, use a power app and create a similar input text box and button, and then write my power fx code in order to, pretty much do the same operations, right? So that's what we are seeing here. I hope that answers your query, Monica. Please explore, and then if you have any queries pertaining to that, we can definitely connect and I can resolve that for you. The next demo that we have is, which is the interesting part, uh, which kind of I mentioned that I plugged in last night. Let's just quickly take a look at that before we look into the last part, which is the code, right? So what is this doing? So it's kind of going to access an API service in the background. We look into the Power Automate, but what I'm doing here is I'm just passing some input. So I recently visited Madurai Meenakshi temple. I saw a particular grandmother with grandchild playing, and it kind of looked like a very candid imagery stuck in my mind. So I wanted to test OpenAPI skills to see how well it can actually generate an image and stuff. I hope the demo gods are in favor. So this is my prompt. It says grandmother praying to goddess Meenakshi along with her grandchild with folded hands at Madurai Meenakshi temple, right? So I'm going to go and click on submit. I have not worked on the nitty gritty details of putting in a progress bar, kind of, it takes some time for the API call to happen in the background. Pretty much access the OpenAI service, send out the prompt, process the prompt, receive the input, and then bind that image back, right? So I can ideally, if you look at it, I'm creating a JavaScript, based implementation. I could plug in a particular progress bar in the beginning of my processing, and then in the end, before the image, I know that successfully the image has been retrieved, I can probably bind that. That's pretty much what you can implement after you look at the skeleton code. That's what is missing. But if you look at it, the response is something that is quite quick, right? So even when you're working with open API services, whenever you provide a prompt, it's not immediate. It takes a while, at least 25 to 30 seconds for it to process and generate a high quality image, because we are setting parameters like 1024 into 1024 pixel, which means that it takes some time for the engine to generate that. I think probably, or later in a few years from now, that the processing time might reduce to a few seconds, but at this moment it takes about at least 20 seconds, right? So isn't this brilliant, the image? So this is basically rapid acceleration development, right? So if you look at it, I have been in the span of 3 or 4 years, just by a thought process, I'm able to, through playing JavaScripting, HTML and CSS, create a very intelligent dynamic web component, interact with an AI service, send out my prompt from my enterprise application, and return whatever the data is returned, it can be displayed as well as on screen. Sometimes you might have black boxed AI models as well, which you are working with when you're working with the organization. You don't need to rely upon models which are public in nature. For this demo, I have implemented public, but whenever you're working with within your organizations, there's a good chance that you will have restrictions in accessing public service models. So you might have something internal for your enterprise which is exposed and available. You need to look and explore into those particular capabilities, and then utilize those particular available AI models to work against your implementations. And the strategies are pretty much the same. I mean, it's not going to change. What you are going to apply for the open API is something similar you will apply. It will also have some kind of a security that you need to go through, pass the bearer tokens, create a handshake, basically create a handshake with the API service. Once the handshake is created, effectively you get the particular, you pass the particular prompt, you create the post request, and pass the prompt that gets processed, and then you use the information back to bind it onto your components, right? So we've seen both the demos. Let's take a quick look at the code. So I'm directly going to go into the OpenAI service code because that's more a bit more complex. And I'm not going to show the Power Automate integration because that's a bit more noise. So let's take a quick look. So in Power Pages, if you want to click, if you want to look at the code on a particular page, there is an edit code button here. You click on edit code and automatically opens Visual Studio Code for web in the new page, right? So I have some basic CSS, some styling. Let me just remove this. Da, 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 da. Okay, let's put this. So what you see here is I have some styling. Not going to go into CSS. The experts can take a look. So all my styling components are pretty much sorted here. Whatever I want to apply to my button, labels, everything, it's already available there. And then I have a row section block layout, which is primarily the block layout that is available to be utilized, or what do you say? It's a boilerplate code that is available whenever you create a page, right? And you open it in Visual Studio Code for web. There is a boilerplate container which div tags that Power Pages adds. So that is this particular container. I've extended that particular container with a bit of my own classes. And then what I'm doing is I'm creating a form here. And in the form, I have my label and the input control that we are seeing, which is basically I've ID'd it as image gen prompt. Pratap, I'm hearing a lot of noise. Can you just take a
Oh,
look
okay,
if
okay.
there is some?
Nice.
Yeah. So if it has been ID'd as image gen prompt, right? And then I have a button. So what you see on the page is pretty much very simple controls. There's a label, there is a header, and there is a text box which accepts input, and then a submit button, right? We didn't test whether what happens if I pass a new prompt. So Pratap, do you have a prompt for me?
So for related to this one,
Yeah, give me a new prompt. Let's see if it the service is working.
it's yeah, it's like funny or something related.
Yeah,
So
anything,
can I give
anything.
you
Go
one?
for it.
Yeah. So just give me a prompt like so the parrot is playing cricket.
A parrot is playing cricket. So
Yeah.
there's a good chance that it might actually confuse itself with crickets, which is more like a creature. Let's see what it does. Okay, we'll come back to that image as the last part. So, yeah, funny, no? Interpretations, funny, and AI models interpretation of cricket, we'll have to see, right? I think specifically, Pratap, what I look at it is interestingly, when you say cricket, I think we should mention the word sport for it to be,
Okay.
better in its understanding. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's see what we are going to get into, right? And then coming back to the code, after the form, I just have a plain image tag. This is where I'm binding it. So I have a width of 1024 because that is the basic size that I'm expanding. I'm expecting the service to return. And in this particular script, very very plain vanilla JavaScript, right? So I'm using the document led I'm adding an event listener onto the submit button for that particular image and form id. I've used that form id here, preventing any event defaults, accessing some details here, blocking them so that I can pretty much make my ajax call safely. If you remember, I had mentioned that you need to copy a Power Automate URL, right? Once you add it. So let's go back here and showcase again so that you don't remember, you don't forget. Once you add a particular flow to your site, I told you a URL is generated. This is the URL that it expects, right? So if you click that URL, that is pretty much the URL that you are seeing here. You can make this dynamic. You can use all your techniques, dynamic techniques of pulling this from a configuration list instead of hard coding it and all of that. For this demo, I've not done any of that, right? And then I am going to pass my prompt, which is the input from the input field as the payload. So that's why I'm kind of stringifying it. And if you look at it, it's plain again, shell.ajax safe post is very much a plain JavaScript post call. Content type setting application JSON. The URL is again being passed there, which is basically what we have set here, which is the service to be called. And once that is done, it will return or give me the response. And if you look at it in my response, I'm just plain simple loop. I mean, just extracting the URL component out of the result, assign it to the SRC property of the GenAI image tag here. This is my GenAI image, and that's it. And I'm blocking the other part of the window. That's it. It's as simple as this. And if you feel that, how do I kind of write this code, from where did Bhargav get this opportunity? Nothing, no rocket science. Of course, for the AI demo I had to put in my brains, but for the weather app it is already available here. So what you should do is, you should always go look at some of the samples that Microsoft is providing, understand what is happening in the background, understand, work with the existing samples, try to create your own demos. And then once you demo what is available through Microsoft, and if you're able to work with it, automatically your intelligence start kicking in creating your own components. And that's how I was able to think about the utilizing the AI service in the background and connecting it with Power Pages, right? So all the code is available here for the weather app. You can utilize this code, and pretty much you just have to change the URL here. In my case, I have changed the URL, the Cloud4 URL, and that's it. So anybody who has basic set of JavaScript, HTML, and CSS understanding, after the basic configurations that you have done, which we have discussed in this particular session, it is quite quick to achieve. Last part is, I'm just going to go to the flow generator. I've not shown you the AI service, how it is being called. So before we go into the flow generator, I want to start with saying that I have built a custom connector, right? So what is important is, you have to look at first accessing the OpenAI service. After generating the API key from the OpenAI service, so this is my platform.openai.com, and if you go to my account, I can see my API keys. So these are all the API keys that I have, right? And once I've copied a particular API key, that's it. I make a copy of the API key. Oh, we have come to the secret part. We'll come to that to the end. So pretty much follow the standard practices of creating a custom connector, but what is more important is the definition here. So at the definition, the content type is application JSON. I'm not going to deep dive there. Especially the body is what I would say that you need to take a look. So what I'm doing is, in the body, I'm saying I'm going to pass this information. So model to use, I'm going to set value as dal e3. Going to go back and say number of images I want to display is only one, but the description is n here. You can pass n here, and then you can also say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, thereby, which means that you can create a drop down list in your UI for the user to select how many images, and then dynamically you can bind that many images also to the images tags. So that's totally up to you. I mean, your implementation, right? So but one thing that I recommend is to make this particular, whenever you create a property, schema property, if it needs to be showcased within your Power Automate, you need to make that as required, set it as important. Text prompt and then image size as similar, right? Image size quickly showcase. Don't think asterisks will work here. Asterisks will not work. So you copy the image generations, everything from here. So I have copied everything from here, right? So I've taken the curl example. The API call is copied from here. And I know the bearer token with space, the API key is what the authorization header is expecting. The model is DAL E3. As you've seen, we have already set that. A prompt is basically what we are passing. N is the number of images to generate and the size. So this is the body sample that I also passed to the JSON payload, right, for the request. And then for the response as well, I kind of define what will be the response, right? So use the standard practices of developing a custom connector, and then once the custom connector is developed, you create a connection. In this, when you create a connection, it will expect a API key, and when you go to connections, you can see that particular connection for the first time you create it. So as you see, for MSN weather sample, we have this, and then for chat GPT, I have both the connections established here, right? And you can test that using the custom connectors test option. If everything is working fine, you plug it in into a flow. So I have a flow here. Quick water break. I know we're almost reaching time. I have 10 minutes. I think I should be able to close in 5. Yeah, pretty much I'm using the same strategies. I'm using the same trigger, which is the power pages. Whenever it is being called from power pages, the flow is being called from a power pages. I've initialized three variables, string variables, which is to get the revised response values. That is, whenever we send a prompt, prompt to OpenAI service, it applies its own techniques to revise the prompt, right? It adds its own phrases or keywords to it. So that's what I want to get fetch back as well. Apart from that, I also have the URL, which is the most important part, which is what we are using to tag to the image, and then the created time and date as well. But what is important is I am using my custom connector here. So this is the important part. So here I pass the model to use, which is DALI 3 again. Number of images is going to be 1, and image size. So if you see, it kind of, because I provided static values, it kind of accepts all the following inputs. So even from your UI perspective, I have only a plain text box. I'm receiving the text and I'm passing here. If you feel like you want to pass the number of images and image size, you can extend your UI as well, right? So not going to waste time here. Once that is done, I'm passing the JSON, I'm passing this payload, and once this sample payload is there, it will be able to generate its, and then it will set the outputs. This is the critical part. If you know how to traverse your JSON, you have understanding of the root attributes, sub attributes, and child attributes. Pretty much is going to save you a lot of time instead of wasting time on how to extract it. If you're well versed with it, this language, you should be able to pretty much apply this. I'm just going to, for the benefit of everybody, I'm just going to quickly explain what this is. So it says I want outputs from parse JSON from the body. Get me from the data attribute the first element which has the value revised prompt, right? So this is pretty much what I'm saying. And similarly for the set variable for the URL, where I'm doing the same. Instead of revised prompt, I'm calling for URL, right? What happens is when you directly try to add the payload here, since it is in a loop condition and there are sub elements to access, Power Automate kind of considers that as a for each loop. And this return values to Power Pages will not work in a for each loop. That is the reason why we are passing the JSON, setting the values, extracting them, whatever we desire much in advance into variables, and then passing this return values, passing this to the return values to Power Pages in the form of expressions, extracting them and applying them, right? So I'm just going to quickly show one successful run, and then we are done. So 10 minutes ago, we had a successful run. So a parrot is playing cricket. That was the prompt, right? So all the generate image from prompt has been executed. And if you see, the data that is generated is revised prompt, right? That is the response that you're receiving. And what it says, let me just click raw inputs so that you can read it better. Da, 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 da. Is it possible to? No, I don't think it's possible to scroll. Okay, let's see. Imagine a beautiful and colorful parrot actively engaged in a game of cricket. The parrot holds the cricket bat in its claws and it's preparing to hit an incoming cricket ball. Include a cricket pitch in the background with all the typical markings and wickets. Capture the intensity of the moment and the unique juxtaposition of a flight creature competing in a terrestrial game. Did you just see what happened? And how, I mean, what levels OpenAI has taken the prompt. And then once it has revised the prompt and it has generated the URL, it has its URL. I mean, pretty much you can take this URL, copy this, and you can utilize this anywhere, right? So quickly going ahead, parse JSON. I'm just using this payload as we have seen, setting the individual variables and then setting them to the Power Pages. That's it. So let's go to the last part. We sent this. Ta-da. Looks good. Happy
Yes, of
Pratap.
course. Of course.
Uh, the
Actually,
the
I tried. Yeah, actually, I tried in the Dali 2, I think. Dali 3.5 turbo, I think. No, sorry, not the 3. Dali 2. So, but I'm not familiar this much of occurrence it will be like it's different pictures. So I get it, but not
DALI
this much
3
of
is
accurate picture. I
DALI
think.
3 is very good.
Yeah,
DALI 3 is very good.
yeah,
And DALI 2 had limitations. It had starting from I think 256 into 256. That was the maximum size. A maximum size was 1024 into 1024. But DALI 3 by default
yeah.
is HD. Okay. Default image quality is HD. And the basic first resolution size in itself is 1024 into 1024. Starts from that pixel.
Wow.
So it's pretty good.
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay. So I think
Yeah.
I have covered pretty much everything, done a quick code walkthrough, done everything probably. So I'm just going to take a pause. Any final questions I'm ready to take, and then we can close, I guess. Rhoda.
Yes, I have a question in the Twitter. So I'm a mechanical student. I'm more interested in the software jobs. It is necessary to write the code to get started the Power Apps.
Great question. Uh, Not if you want to journey yourself as a business professional or an IT professional who can be a content author and a content maker, right? Pretty much today,
Yeah,
AI tools can empower you to do anything and everything. Almost, I think, last night I was reading articles and then I saw something called Sora. OpenAPI released something called Sora, which basically will take similar prompts and it has the ability to generate a 1 minute video. For example, if I
yeah,
say showcase a handsome man walking between walking in New York Times Square, and wearing a suit with a briefcase in his hand, something like that. It can actually generate a video of a man, handsome man walking, whatever based on your prompt. It can generate a 1 minute video, which is quite acceptable. So you should look at how some of the out of the box videos that have been generated by Sora. It's going to take the world by storm because the capabilities are increasing. So in future, if you know what is prompt engineering, you know how to efficiently prompt. Like for example, we looked at the revised prompt here. If you are good at prompting to engines and generate output, you can make a career out of becoming a professional who's just going to be an IT professional as a content author, content manager, or somebody who's design oriented, whereby you don't have to deal with the integrate details of writing code, generating it, working with APIs and stuff. But having said that, if you're looking at paymaster jobs, I would definitely say that look at enhancing your skills not only on low code no code tools. I understand next 3 years, 70% of application development is moving towards low code no code tools. But I would say that in order to be still relevant, I would say that you should be a bit more technology oriented, understand at least basic things like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, like what I have tried to plug in here, and keep yourself well versed with at least the basics of technology in order to be able to generate some component, some kind of custom components, right? That way you know the best of the both worlds, right? And it will be easy to deal with customers, talk about to them when you're like suddenly you're having a cup of coffee, you bump into one of your customer and they say, hey, how long is this going to take to develop in Power Platform? And there might be something that you're missing if you don't know from application development perspective. So it's easier for you to respond to your customers if you are averse with some of those particular pro code skills as well. So keep an open mind and look at those pro code, acquiring those pro code skills as well.
yeah. So thank you so much, Bhargav. So I think we have to, yeah. So thank you so much. I think so we have lots of questions, but I need to jump into the other session. But feel free to. I think I just given your LinkedIn profile to the Facebook and Twitter as well. So
Yeah,
probably I just conveyed them. So please feel to reach out to Bhargav. So for you have any queries related to all the essentials like so Power Apps, so Power Automate, Canvas app, whatever it may be related to everything. So he's the right person to guide you and help you in that particular things. Okay, thank you so much for Bhargav for the have a wonderful session.
thanks guys, it's been a pleasure, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can have a chat and we can work around your any crazy ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just end the stream.